Waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. every night and lying there unable to fall back asleep is one of the most draining things your body can go through. And if you are over 70, it is happening because your cortisol is spiking at night when it should be completely quiet. These 5 bedtime supplements crush that spike and give your body back the deep restorative sleep it needs. Number 5. Vitamin D3. Most people over 70 who take vitamin D are taking it for their bones. That is a completely reasonable reason to take it. But what almost nobody has explained to you is that the same deficiency that weakens your bones is also directly disrupting your sleep every single night and keeping your cortisol elevated when it should be winding down. Your doctor may have checked your vitamin D levels in the context of bone health, but very few doctors check whether your levels are high enough to support healthy cortisol regulation and sleep. Those are different thresholds, and if you are over 70, you are very likely not hitting either of them. Vitamin D receptors exist throughout your brain, including in the areas that regulate your sleep-wake cycle and your cortisol response. When vitamin D levels are low, those receptors do not get the signals they need to properly regulate your body's internal clock. The result is a disrupted circadian rhythm that makes it harder for your cortisol to follow its natural curve of dropping low at night and rising in the morning. Instead, cortisol stays elevated through the night, interrupting your sleep at the exact hours your body should be in its deepest repair cycles. A 2025 study of 465 seniors confirmed the direct link between vitamin D deficiency and poor sleep quality. The participants with the lowest vitamin D levels reported the most frequent nighttime waking and the least amount of restorative deep sleep. What made this finding significant is that many of those participants were already taking vitamin D for bone health, but at doses too low to meaningfully affect their sleep. The dose that supports bones and the dose that supports sleep and cortisol regulation are not always the same thing. After 70, your skin produces significantly less vitamin D from sun exposure than it did when you were younger. Even if you spend time outdoors regularly, your body is simply not converting sunlight into vitamin D at the rate it used to. That makes supplementation not just helpful, but essentially necessary for maintaining the levels your brain needs to regulate cortisol and sleep properly. And the gap between what your skin can produce and what your brain needs gets wider every decade past 60. If you have been waking up consistently at the same time every night and nothing you have tried has made a lasting difference, low vitamin D interfering with your cortisol cycle could be a significant part of what is happening. It is one of the most overlooked and most correctable contributors to nighttime waking in adults over 70. A simple blood test can confirm where your levels are and whether supplementation at a meaningful dose is something worth discussing with your doctor. Take 2,000 to 4,000 IU of vitamin D3 daily with your largest meal, since vitamin D is fat-soluble and absorbs better with food. Take it in the morning or at lunch rather than at night, because vitamin D can be slightly stimulating, and taking it too close to bedtime may work against the sleep you are trying to improve. Look for D3 specifically rather than D2, as D3 is the form your body uses most efficiently. People who correct a meaningful vitamin D deficiency often describe the change in their sleep as gradual but unmistakable. The waking becomes less jolting and easier to recover from. After a few weeks, it becomes less frequent altogether, and the sleep feels deeper and more restoring than it has in years. But vitamin D is just the foundation. The next supplement works on an entirely different part of the cortisol problem, and it is one that will genuinely surprise you. Number 4. Probiotics. This one will surprise you because when you hear the word probiotics, you probably think of digestion. You do not think of cortisol or sleep. But the connection between your gut bacteria and your nighttime cortisol levels is one of the most significant findings in recent sleep research, and it explains something that you have probably never had explained to you. Your gut is not just a digestive organ. It is a major regulator of how your brain handles stress at night, and when it is out of balance, the effects show up directly in how your cortisol behaves while you sleep. Your gut and your brain are in constant two-way communication through what researchers call the gut-brain axis. The bacteria living in your gut produce neurotransmitters including serotonin, GABA, and dopamine that travel directly to your brain and influence how it regulates stress and sleep. When your gut microbiome is out of balance, those neurotransmitter signals become disrupted, and your brain loses some of its ability to properly regulate cortisol at night. Essentially, your gut bacteria are supposed to be sending calming signals to your brain every evening, and when they are out of balance, those signals are weaker and less consistent than your brain needs them to be. A 2024 meta-analysis of 46 randomized controlled trials confirmed that probiotic supplementation produces a measurable reduction in cortisol levels and significant improvements in sleep quality across multiple age groups. The mechanism is the gut-brain axis. When you restore balance to your gut bacteria, the signals your gut sends to your brain improve, and your brain's ability to keep cortisol in check at night improves with it. After 70, your gut microbiome naturally loses diversity. The beneficial bacteria that support neurotransmitter production and cortisol regulation decrease, while less helpful bacteria increase. That shift in your gut environment has downstream effects on your brain chemistry that show up as disrupted sleep, elevated cortisol, and that wired but tired feeling that so many people over 70 describe experiencing every evening. The gut microbiome changes that happen with age are not inevitable in their effects. Restoring that diversity through supplementation is something that research has shown produces measurable results. If your sleep disruption has been accompanied by any digestive changes, bloating, or irregular bowel habits, those are signs that your gut microbiome has shifted in ways that may be affecting more than just your digestion. The cortisol and sleep effects of a disrupted gut microbiome are real, and they are correctable. Take a probiotic supplement with at least 10 billion CFU and multiple strains including lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which have the strongest research support for cortisol and sleep specifically. Take it at the same time each day, either with breakfast or dinner, and give it at least 4 to 6 weeks of consistent use before evaluating whether it is making a difference. Probiotic benefits build gradually as your gut microbiome shifts toward a healthier balance. The experience of consistent probiotic use for sleep is subtle at first. You may notice your evenings feel slightly calmer before you notice anything different about your actual sleep. That low-level tension that sits in your chest at night starts to ease, and then gradually the waking becomes less frequent and falls back asleep more naturally than before. And speaking of closing gaps, the next supplement works directly on the brain chemistry that lets your stress response run too hot at night. You have probably walked past it in a grocery store without knowing what it does. Number 3. Lemon balm. Lemon balm is a herb from the mint family that has been used for centuries to calm the nervous system and now has solid modern research backing what traditional medicine has always known about it. What makes lemon balm particularly relevant for nighttime cortisol is the specific way it interacts with your brain's GABA system. Unlike many sleep supplements that work by making you feel drowsy, lemon balm works by addressing the neurological reason cortisol stays elevated in the first place. GABA is your brain's primary calming neurotransmitter. When GABA activity is high, your brain quiets down, anxiety eases, and cortisol drops. When GABA activity is low, your brain stays in a state of low-level alert that keeps cortisol elevated through the night and prevents the deep sleep phases where your body does its most important repair work. Lemon balm contains compounds called rosmarinic acid and flavonoids that inhibit the enzyme responsible for breaking down GABA in the brain. The result is higher GABA activity, which directly translates to lower cortisol and better sleep. Your brain already has the calming chemistry it needs. Lemon balm helps it stay active longer rather than breaking down too quickly. A 2024 double-blind, placebo-controlled study confirmed that lemon balm extract significantly improved sleep quality in adults with sleep disturbances. An earlier study found that 85% of participants reported improved sleep after taking lemon balm consistently. The cortisol-lowering effect happens because when GABA activity increases, your brain's stress response system quiets down, and cortisol no longer has the neurological environment it needs to spike repeatedly through the night. After 70, GABA activity naturally declines. Your brain produces less of it, and the receptors that respond to it become less sensitive. That decline in GABA function is one of the primary reasons sleep becomes more fragmented and cortisol becomes more disruptive as you get older. Lemon balm directly supports GABA activity in a way that becomes more meaningful the older you are because you are replenishing something your brain is genuinely running lower on. The response to lemon balm tends to be more pronounced in older adults for exactly this reason. If you find yourself lying awake with a racing mind or low-level anxiety that you cannot quite turn off at night, that is your GABA system struggling to quiet your brain's stress response. Lemon balm addresses that specific problem at the neurological level rather than just masking it with sedation. Take 300 to 600 milligrams of lemon balm extract about 30 to 45 minutes before bed. It is available as capsules, tinctures, and teas, though the capsule form gives you the most consistent and measurable dose. Look for a standardized extract with rosmarinic acid on the label, as that is the active compound with the strongest research support. You will likely notice a quieting of the mental chatter within the first few nights and deeper, more consistent sleep building over the first 2 weeks. The way people describe the lemon balm experience is that the worries that felt overwhelming an hour before bed suddenly feel manageable and distant. Like someone turned the volume down on the part of your brain that keeps rehearsing everything that could go wrong. That quieting is your GABA system getting the support it needs, and cortisol finally settling down the way it should at night. That said, lemon balm addresses the mental and emotional side of nighttime cortisol. What comes next works directly on the physical cycle that keeps waking you up even when your mind is calm. Number 2. Valerian root. Valerian root has been used specifically for sleep for over 2,000 years, and modern research has confirmed that the traditional use was well-founded. What makes valerian particularly effective for cortisol specifically is that it does not just sedate you the way a sleeping pill would. It works on the actual mechanism that keeps cortisol elevated at night and prevents deep sleep from happening. That distinction matters enormously because a sedative that knocks you out is not the same as a supplement that addresses why your cortisol is spiking in the first place. Valerian root contains compounds called valerianic acid and isovaleric acid that interact directly with your brain's GABA receptors in a way similar to how anxiety medications work, but without the dependency risk or the morning grogginess that makes prescription sleep medications so problematic for older adults. By enhancing GABA receptor sensitivity, valerian helps your brain respond more effectively to its own calming signals, which gives cortisol less opportunity to spike and interrupt your sleep cycle. Research has found that valerian root reduces the time it takes to fall asleep, increases the amount of time spent in deep slow-wave sleep, and reduces nighttime waking. A meta-analysis reviewing multiple clinical trials concluded that valerian can be safely used as a sleep aid with a favorable safety profile, particularly relevant for older adults who are often managing multiple medications and cannot afford additional drug interactions or side effects. The safety profile of valerian is one of the reasons it is worth considering before turning to pharmaceutical options that carry significantly more risk for older adults. After 70, the combination of declining GABA function and elevated baseline cortisol creates a self-reinforcing cycle where poor sleep leads to higher cortisol and higher cortisol leads to poorer sleep. Valerian interrupts that cycle by simultaneously supporting GABA function and reducing the neurological conditions that allow cortisol to spike unchecked through the night. Breaking that cycle even partially creates a positive momentum where each night of better sleep makes the next night slightly easier. If you have been relying on over-the-counter sleep medications or prescription sleep aids and find that they leave you groggy the next morning or have stopped working as effectively as they used to, valerian root addresses the underlying cortisol mechanism rather than simply sedating your brain. That fundamental difference is why many people find it more sustainable and more effective over time. Take 300 to 600 milligrams of valerian root extract about an hour before bed. It has a strong, earthy smell that some people find unpleasant in tea form, so the capsule form is usually easier to take consistently. Give it at least 2 to 4 weeks of consistent nightly use as valerian tends to build in effectiveness over time. Do not combine it with alcohol or prescription sedatives, as the combination can be too strong. People who use valerian consistently describe a feeling like someone finally switched off a light that had been left on inside their head. Not the groggy heaviness of a sleeping pill, but a genuine settling down of the cortisol-driven alertness that was keeping them awake. You lie down, and instead of your body being ready to spring awake, it actually starts to let go. That is what addressing the underlying cortisol mechanism feels like rather than just suppressing it. And now we come to the number one supplement on this list. The one with the most research, the most consistent results, and the deficiency statistic that explains why so many people over 70 have been waking up every single night for years, despite trying everything else. Number 1. Magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate sits at number 1 because the research behind it for nighttime cortisol and deep sleep is the most consistent and comprehensive of anything on this list, and because of a deficiency statistic that will change how you think about your sleep problem entirely. Research has found that up to 80% of adults over 70 are deficient in magnesium. That deficiency is not a minor inconvenience. Magnesium is directly involved in regulating your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the master control system for your cortisol production. When magnesium levels are low, your adrenal glands become overactive and produce cortisol more readily and more frequently than they should. That is why magnesium deficiency and nighttime cortisol spikes are so closely linked in older adults. Your adrenal glands are essentially running without their most important brake pedal, and until you address the magnesium deficit, that brake pedal stays missing no matter what else you try. Magnesium glycinate, specifically rather than other forms of magnesium, combines magnesium with glycine, which is an amino acid that has its own powerful sleep-promoting properties. Glycine lowers your core body temperature slightly, which signals to your brain that it is time to sleep, and simultaneously acts as an inhibitory neurotransmitter that quiets the excitatory signals, keeping your brain in a state of, quote, alert. So magnesium glycinate is delivering two separate cortisol and sleep-supporting compounds in a single supplement. That combination is why the glycinate form specifically outperforms other magnesium forms in sleep research. A double-blind clinical trial, specifically on magnesium in elderly subjects, found that supplementation significantly reduced serum cortisol levels and improved sleep quality. A separate 2024 randomized controlled trial confirmed that magnesium glycinate specifically reduced insomnia severity within 14 days of consistent use. A meta-analysis of multiple randomized controlled trials in older adults found that magnesium reduced sleep onset by an average of 17 minutes and significantly improved sleep efficiency scores. The consistency of those results across different study populations is what makes the evidence for magnesium so compelling. After 70, your kidneys excrete more magnesium than they did when you were younger, and certain common medications, including blood pressure medications, diuretics, and proton pump inhibitors, deplete magnesium further. Even if you have been eating reasonably well, your magnesium levels are very likely lower than they need to be for your adrenal glands to regulate cortisol properly at night. And because magnesium deficiency does not produce dramatic symptoms in the early stages, it is easy to miss the connection between low magnesium and the nighttime cortisol spikes that are destroying your sleep. If you have tried other approaches to your nighttime waking without lasting results, the magnesium deficiency that is driving your cortisol spike may simply never have been addressed. It is the most common and most correctable underlying cause of nighttime cortisol spikes in adults over 70, and it is the one most likely to produce noticeable results relatively quickly. Take 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate about an hour before bed. Start with the lower dose and increase gradually if needed. It dissolves well in warm water if you prefer not to take capsules, and the glycine gives it a slightly pleasant taste that is easy to take consistently. You will likely notice it is easier to fall asleep within the first week, and within 2 weeks the nighttime waking that has been disrupting your sleep should start becoming less frequent and less prolonged when it does happen. Give it a full 4 weeks of consistent nightly use before deciding whether it is working, because magnesium builds up in your system over time and the full benefit takes several weeks to develop. The experience people describe with magnesium glycinate is that the racing thoughts that used to circle at bedtime simply quiet down. Not because you force them to, but because your nervous system finally has what it needs to do that on its own. You lie down, and instead of your mind running through everything that happened and everything coming tomorrow, there is just stillness. And when that 2 or 3 a.m. hour arrives, your body no longer treats it as an emergency. The cortisol that was yanking you awake stops finding the trigger it needs, and you sleep through. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 5 supplements are you going to try first? Or are you already taking any of them and noticing a difference? Tell us in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you found this helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. Thanks for watching.